Well, good morning. Welcome to Birns and Sawyer. My name is William Muir, and I appreciate you all coming out today for our seminar. We're going to have a special guest here today. Laszlo Kovacs, the great cinematographer, is going to be here signing his new book, The New Wave King. So I really encourage you folks, after the seminar ends, if you want to meet Laszlo and maybe purchase one of his books and have him sign it. He's a very gracious man and just a fabulous cinematographer. He shot actually Easy Rider, and Birns and Sawyer provided the cameras on Easy Rider back in the early days, in the late 60s, when it was shot with an Airy 2C and a blimp. So technology's come a long way. So please join me in a round of applause.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be here. And especially, I think this is to me, one of the most important workshop or seminar about lights, And as you know, lighting is the most important tool of the cinematographer. The reason I am saying the most important, because light creates image. We know that. You have to study light in a real nature, real environment. Take a sunset. Go into your living room. Hopefully you get a streaming sunlight coming into you, like a single source. And just watch what that light does. Where it hits, probably it's the brightest. But light reflects everywhere, and it creates ambient images. And especially this time of the year, it's so beautiful because the sun in California right now is the lowest arc level. It's going to be good until May. So briefly, this is my introduction to this wonderful lighting demonstration with my dear friend, because we are going back incredibly far. We have such an incredible working relationship and also friendship. Would you please welcome this incredible person, Foster Dinker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Can I sit in the audience?
Sure.
All right, great.
It's really nice to be here with you today. I enjoy helping out emerging filmmakers like yourselves. And there's an ongoing reference of my phone number on the chart over there and my email in case you need to reach me. What Laszlo was talking about is something we want to address for a few minutes. Natural light. The great painters, the classic painters, spent their entire lives studying how natural light worked. And they painted the effects of that light on certain people and certain places. And if you go to study those in a museum or in a book, you will begin to get a perspective on how natural light can work for you. It's not just turning on lights to illuminate the area. It's placing them in a way that is aesthetically very interesting. So, one of the things we want to start with is a little bit about the nomenclature of lighting equipment. This is a typical representative of what we call the Fresnel family. That is, it has a lens in front of it, and that's called a Fresnel. There's other lights that we have that have no lens. They're called open face lights. What this Fresnel does is focus the light beam down. Actually, it focuses the light beam and makes it more intense. If you take the Fresnel out, you lose a lot of the intensity of the light. It also softens the light a little bit. Not merely enough for today's films and video systems, however. The Fresnel is usually too sharp, and we usually put diffusion over it, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Now, each one of these Fresnel lights generally comes with this little thing. Anybody know what this is called? Barn doors, right. And that's to further control the light. The globe inside the light is, when the light is properly mounted, the globe is, the top of the globe heads upward toward the sky, okay? Because it's real easy. Some of these lights are just completely round. Here, you sort of see a base that would lead you to believe, well, that's probably the bottom of the light. But a lot of the lights are completely round, and there doesn't seem to be any base. So what you need to do is you need to find out how you open the light and get to the bulb, and you need to find out, okay, the bulb is this way, the top of the globe, so that's the top of the light. That's got to point upward. The bulb is designed to burn in a position that is actually either straight up pointing to the sky or at a 45-degree angle either this way or that way. The lighting instrument is designed around the bulb burning in that way, and it ventilates properly that way. If you burn it any other way, the lamp and the bulb do not ventilate correctly, and the bulb will burn out faster. Now, does that mean we can't point this light straight up and use it that way? Or for that matter, mount it, suppose we were on a porch and we wanted a porch light effect, and we wanted this light mounted like this to come straight down. Can we do that? Sure we can. But we're not burning it in the ideal position. So therefore, you're going to know that your bulb is going to burn out more quickly. The other thing is you can turn it off once you set it. Turn it off until you need to start shooting. And when you finish shooting, try to turn that light off first. Now, each one of these lamps usually has a method of focusing the lamp so that you can spot or flood it. Okay? And that's usually located in the back of the lamp, but on some lamps, it also is on the front. So the rod goes straight through. So you want to know where your focusing deal is. Now, one of the things you need to know about this is when you want to be neat with your cable, a lot of people take the excess cable and they coil it down by the lamp to be nice and neat. The thing that's wrong about that is that because of the gravity in the ground and the electricity running around and around, what you've done is you've created an electromagnetic field. And it won't take too long for that cable to heat up, and it won't take much longer for it to burn right straight through the insulation. So be real careful not to do that. If you have some excess cable, you can sit it loosely around the lamp like that. I usually kick it under the lamp so people won't fall over it. And it's usually good to keep the extra cable by the lamp. So if you go to move the lamp, you've got the cable right there. We were shooting in a bank one time upstairs, and we had the cable all nicely coiled, this extra coil, because we were shooting in the president's office doing an interview for a commercial. And along about the middle of the afternoon, the fire department showed up. And I finally went over it, and I saw that there was some smoke over by the floor where I had this cable coiled. And I realized there's something wrong with the cable. So I turned the light off, and I went to pick the cable up, and underneath with the copper, it burned right through to the copper. It burned right through the floor. And the smoke was going down into the ceiling. So we almost had a real good fire. So that's why it is something. A lot of guys do that. A lot of set lighting people in our business, you'll see it all the time. I tell them in our safety meetings, do not do this. They go right ahead and do it anyway. Professional set lighting technicians. This is a 300-watt unit. And usually you'll use these for smaller jobs where you're inside a small room, the size of your average office size. Or you're in a kitchen or living. And usually these units are not used for your main source of light unless you're doing a documentary kind of thing where this is your only light and you're just lighting a person's face. Usually you use a bigger light. A word about the stands. Doesn't matter too much on a small stand like this, but when you get into bigger stands, you might want to get into the habit of how you work a stand. These risers, usually you want to start with the top riser when you're going up. And the reason is your hands are always then roughly waist level. So you go up like this. If you do the reverse and you go up with this bottom riser first, and then you're working up here, and you're raising that light. Of course, with a little small light, it doesn't matter, but you'd be surprised. That little operation there, you're constantly doing this above your waist level. It builds up in your back like radiation. These bulbs that are in these lights, these are what you call high-intensity motion picture photographic bulbs. Manufacturers of the color films came up with the ideal chemical structure to take photographs with. Unfortunately, the normal household type lighting bulb isn't in that range of color. You know, the spectrum goes from your deep purple right through all of the yellows and reds, like the colors of a rainbow. Now let's take a look at it. This is the color spectrum of light. If you pass white light through a prism, this is what you'll get. So right in here you have about 3,200 degrees Kelvin, and that's where Kodak found that their films would work color-wise, the best color renditions. So now they went to the lighting bulb manufacturers like General Electric, and they said, your normal household lighting bulbs and the bulbs we have to date for illumination for black and white photography are down around 2,400 to 2,600 degrees Kelvin, which gives us a reddish look on the film. Can you make a bulb that has up into 3,200 degrees Kelvin? They designed the bulb to work at about 85 volts, between 85 and 90 volts. Now the normal current in your house and the normal current that we feed lights on a set is 120 volts. And if the filaments, these filaments are designed correctly, they'll withstand that extra voltage, but the light will get brighter. That's why they're called high-intensity bulbs, because they're working beyond what the manufacturer designed them for. And that's why sometimes when these bulbs blow out, they not only blow out, they explode. And that can be extremely dangerous in bigger lights. Bigger lights, the bulb blows, it usually will crack or break the Fresnel, and the Fresnel can fall. And it's like molten glass. So we really kind of are pretty careful about not placing those lights close to people. So if that should happen, we're careful of that. Okay. Now, along these other bulbs, there's a very valuable bulb for you to know. This series of bulbs here are number 1, number 2, and number 3 photofloods. They come up with what they call a 211, 212, and 213. This is household size. The 211 bulb is used all the time. It's a 75 watt, 3,200 degree Kelvin bulb. So it's color corrected. This little light, this type of thing here is great for the kind of work that you do when you don't have any money. You'll want to learn lighting. This is you put a 211 in here, and you can put diffusion on it. And these are great little lights. A very famous cameraman that I've worked with, done a lot of shows, this is what he uses for an eye light on the camera. We've got all these fancy lights. He likes this, swears by it. And you know, we've tried to make it look professional. We've painted them black, and we put sometimes numbers on them, so that, you know, and we take. But anyway, this is don't forget these are great little things to work with. Okay. Now, before we get started plugging lights in a house or anything, we need to know something about wattage and amperage. In the movie industry, we rate 100 watts as 1 amp. This makes it real easy. Actually 100 watts is a little less than an amp, but giving it the rating of an amp gives you a little bit of a safety factor, which when you get up into start working in terms of lights like 300 watts, 1,000 watts, so 1,000 watts is equal to how many amps? 10, right. Actually, it's about 8.5, but by giving yourself 1,000 watts equals 1 amp, 10 amps, you're giving yourself a couple of amps of safety, which is very, very important and critical, especially when you're working in places that are not a studio. Because these little household plugs generally are supposed to have a 15 or 20 amp circuit. They have other things on them. Also, because of the period of time, you get corrosion. And the wires get a little loose in there because of the constant movement, especially in this area of earthquakes and stuff, but just the regular movement of the earth. Be surprised, it creates stresses inside, and those darn things work their way a little loose. So you're putting a light that's 1,000 watts and you're plugging that in. That was really, in a household, that was never designed to have 1,000 watts coming out of that. Yeah, although it's a 20 amp circuit, everything is sort of safety and precaution. So you've got to keep in mind, these things aren't really the best places to plug lights in. So knowing that, rating, as I say, rating 1,000 watt light at 10 amps, that's basically all you want to pull off a circuit, okay? So if you're going to go into a place to shoot, you need to identify 3, 4, 5, 6 circuits that you can use. That'll give you enough so you can have a half dozen lights plugged in. And you want to know what circuits those are. Now, anybody know how to isolate circuits real quick? Well, you take anything that has a bulb and a plug that works, something like this is great. It's because it's easy. You plug it in to the circuit that you think you're going to use, and you go find the fuse box, and you have someone, it usually takes 2 people. Someone has to stand by where this thing is on, and the other person has to start turning off and on the circuit breakers until this thing goes off. And the minute it goes off, you say, okay, mark that. And then you usually make a little mark, take a little piece of tape, and you can mark it right on the little thing, A or 1 or however you want to mark it. Leave the circuit breaker off, and then take this little unit and go to another outlet. And if you plug it in and it doesn't work, aha, you know those 2 are the same circuit. So you keep that system, you keep going around till you find one that works. That'll be your second circuit, okay? And then you got to keep flipping the circuit breakers off until that one goes off. Then you mark that, and then leave it off, and that's how you do that. It takes a little while, but it's very useful. There's only one precaution I want to tell you before you do this. You start these days turning circuit breakers off or unscrewing fuses or pulling out fuses if they're bus fuses. What should you do first? You don't want to start turning off circuit breakers until you make sure that if there are computers in the house or the building or the office, those computers are turned off. Okay? You're rushing, you're in a hurry, you don't have the time, you haven't isolated the circuits. Where you're going to have to go by guess and luck. Okay, where are you apt to find some separate circuits, let's say in a house or an apartment? Kitchen, right. Where else? Bathroom, right. Where else? Garage, probably, maybe. Sometimes that's wherever the garage is located, that whatever room it backs up to, they've taken power out of that room. Basement. I'm looking for one other major place. Washer and dryer, right. The older the building, the more trouble you're going to have finding separate circuits. If you can, see if you can get the cooperation maybe of the person next door. Always find out where the fuse box is, though, because you're apt to blow a fuse if you're working, especially in an old building. And find out before, either on the day or before you go there, find out, okay, does the fuse box have circuit breakers, or does it have screw-in fuses, or does it have bus fuses? Because you better have some of those, because you're very likely to blow a fuse. Okay? All right. Okay, what we want to talk about in here is a similar thing that we started off first. Let's say you're stuck for time or some other reason, and you want to use a frontal key. Okay? Now, this would be a sort of frontal key. This isn't directly over the camera that's taking the picture that you see here. But this, to start off with, would be a frontal key. Now, we're probably going to be too hot here, so I'm going to get some diffusion ready to put in this light. Let's see where we are, though. Let's turn it on and see what happens to our video system. Okay, it's a little bit too bright. Let's say we'll take a stop off. Okay, now the backlight on her hair. Remember, I said before, when you start to see it go white, that can be a real problem. So we're going to have to take that down at least to stop. And because I have these on dimmers, like we'd have in a regular sitcom studio. Our dimmers are over here, so I can come back to this light and I can dim it down quite a bit until we get at the value that we want it. Let's see, that would be the right, I think, here. Yeah, there we go. See, we want to see detail. And now we're seeing detail here, which is important. This is even a little bit bright for video, but we can be in between there somewhere. Let's talk about this frontal key. Now, a big problem here, I've already said it. A big problem with the frontal key is if we had a microphone boom come in here, this is about where the boom would want to be, or maybe a little higher. But we're going to get that shadow on the back wall. Remember I said that? That's the problem with the frontal key. So, one of the key things we use a lot of in any of our lights is what we call the topper. This is a flag, usually a solid topper. Sometimes we'll call for a scrim topper. But in this event, we have a flag topper. We want to come right down, probably to right over her head. Maybe sometimes we'll even bleed into the forehead a little bit, like I told you in the other room. And we're going to come right down into here. Now, if she's going to get up in a scene, stand up for a second. This might not be a problem to us. Okay, now she's standing up, she's out of the light. But we can sometimes make a compromise and say, well, okay, that's not so bad. Maybe we'll just lift this up a little bit. So when she stands up, she's not completely out of the light. Now sit down. Now she sits into her key. And we still have a topper on the set. So we can get a boom in here. It's not going to be quite as easy, but we can get a boom right up in here. We have to accommodate the sound. What we don't want to do is we do not want to have to come back and dub, especially on a small, low-budget film. You want to make sure to work with your sound and light in a way so that they can get a boom in there and get the ideal sound. It's very, very important. Now, here's another thing that happens. The farther away we get from the light, the sharper that cutter becomes, and the more we can help the sound department out. So sometimes we're going to want to get, am I in the picture yet? I'm going to get to where I'm, okay, we may want to get something like this. Now you see that shadow of the stand on the back wall? Okay, that might not be so bad. It kind of breaks up the wall. But we have a choice here. We might want to put that shadow right in the crack of the wall there. So now what's happening is, this looks like it's from the tree. See, we do this all the time. But now what happens when we drop this topper in? Stand up for a second again, Liz. Okay, now she's fully in there. I can come down a little bit. Like I said before, we don't need her fully in the key. We're going to cheat this right down to the top of her forehead. We've still got light in her eyes. Cutter's here. Now sit down. Now she's come up to the full key. That would mean that would be the important position. If her position is standing, I mean, if we open up the scene and she's sitting, and then she stands up to see this person come in the room, then that would be her position that we'd want to light her at better. So let's just say this is the position. But what happens now, we get this microphone boom come in here, and that boom can come in right where the shadow is. Whereas before we would see it. And we could even get this in closer to give the sound even a sharper cut, like so. Am I in the shot yet? Just beginning to get in the shot, aren't I? Well, if we had a bigger topper, which we normally have them 3 times this length, so we can get the stand way out here, and it'll stretch into the set. Another way to do this is to pull this. If you have smaller flags, like you might not have the room to carry that big of a piece of equipment. Well, you'd take 2 of these. You'd have one just off camera here, and that would pull up to that part. And then you have another one just off camera here, and it stretches in to make a flag that's twice this size, but something still you can fit in the trunk of your car, which is something you always got to take into consideration when you're working like you guys are. You don't have a big truck where to put everything in. You know? And sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes the type of project you're on, you want a low profile. You know. So let's just show you though what happens. We get in here, which I just showed you how you could do this without having to stand in the shot. But now what happens is that microphone boom can come right up to the edge of the flag, and you're not going to see it. Whereas when I'm back here, and this is where a lot of people just don't get it. They set these flags too close to the light. Now when I'm back here, I can't do that with a microphone boom. I can't get right to my edge. See, I'm seeing my boom. I'm seeing my boom way up in here. That's why these toppers are very important. You have to bring them in as close as possible so you can get that sound boom in there, okay? So for now, we're just going to talk about, though, the aesthetics of what we're doing here. We're going to drop this topper down. And now we're going to take some of the light off of here with a bottomer. And we could do that with a solid. What we have here is a double scrim. So let's take a stop off the front of the set. And we're going to come clear up. We're going to come clear up to her hands. Now you'll notice the way these stands are all on top of each other here. This is called nesting. That's why these grip stands are made this way. Each one of these feet are a different height off the ground. So you can slip them one inside the other or one over the other because you're going to be cramped for space in a lot of places. So we're going to keep coming this up. We're going to come right up to the bottom of her chin there. Okay? That's your bottomer. Now, we usually always have siders to be concerned with. A lot of times these siders are flags, and sometimes they're scrims. So we're going to look at the scrim sider first. We're going to just take a little bit of light off the side of the set, and you'll see it going in here. I'm going to tilt this a little bit. You don't want to get too close to the light because number one, they'll burn, and number two, you don't have the control. The closer you get, the softer the whole effect is. But what we want to do is, you see, we're going to start moving this in a little bit. We're going to take light clear off up to where she is. Now you notice how I'm moving this stand around. Now I still want to get, good, okay, I'm getting right up. Can you all see that? I'm getting up to her shoulder with this. Can you all see how that works? See? I'll pull this off, look at the back wall there to her left. I'm coming across that back wall right up to where her shoulder is. See that? Now we're going to do the same on the other side. We're going to take a sider in. You see on the right side there where her shadow is on the wall? We're going to take that off a little bit. Do the same here with this. We'll come right up here. We've got to leave her face in there, but we want to take that light off that back wall. Because the shadow is where it is with this light, we might choose to make this a solid. If we did make this a solid, we're going to take that light off, which takes a little bit of the problem of that light off the wall. So let's just take a look at how this goes. Watch that wall there, and we're going to slide a solid in here. Look what happens on the monitor. We're going to take this. Come right up a little bit. Just clipping in there. Just clipping to where that, see? Yeah. Just to where that is. So that sort of, we've got to be careful when we set this. We don't take it off her face. We just want to get it on the side, just enough so it doesn't call attention to itself so much. Now actually that shadow is coming from a light that's being used to photograph the whole thing here. This is our frontal key. Now, to get rid of that shadow, so that we don't see it, we either have to place the light on the opposite side, or we have to place the light more this way. As we move the light this way, we start to lose that shadow. That is something that different cameramen have a different idea about. Some people don't mind seeing the shadow. Some people want to really diminish seeing that shadow. So what are the ways to do this? When you look at a scene, again, before you start to light it, if you know you're going to light from the right, and you're going to see this shadow on the right, let the shadow fall behind the desk. So key it from the other side. That way you're not going to see the shadow. And we'll do that here, but I want you to see problems that we create when we shoot and how you deal with them. Now, let's look at something else. The chimera is something that a lot of people like, or the Kino flows, or the lights like this that you see up here, which are similar to the Kinos. A lot of people like these kind of lights. They're soft, they're easy to work with, especially they're low amperage, and they put out a lot of nice light.
Is that just standard fluorescent bulbs?
No, those are color balanced, 3,200 degrees Kelvin, and they also come daylight, 5,600 degrees Kelvin. This is a device that's similar to a chimera. And I'm going to put this on this light. And I'm going to take this diffusion out. This is a 2,000 watt light. Now, this is going to cut down a huge amount of light. So I'm going to take and I'm going to lower these scrims, because the minute you start to work with a soft light, like a chimera, everybody see that? Or like we did in the other room where we created a soft light through diffusion, it's the same type of principle. The minute you do that, though, you lose the ability to control and do this kind of thing. Then you have to get all this out in front and way in and sharp, and it becomes very difficult. So there's a certain look that this kind of light gives you that you use it for. In other words, you don't use this and then try to come in and scrim it down, because it doesn't work. There's two different types of lighting. But let's see what happens. We put this up and we turn this on to the frontal key. In the first place, you're going to see that it cuts down an awful lot of light. Cut down an awful lot of light, didn't it? But look what happens. Look at what happened to our shadow. And we've got it soft. Now we could move this in a little bit to get more light out of it. We've also got this little egg crate on the front of it, which is taking away a lot of light. It's funneling the light. But what I'm trying to show you really quickly is that this is a different kind of lighting. And I'll also show you in a few minutes here, we're going to show you the bounce light, same thing. But now I've got a problem with the microphone boom. We've got to get that boom in here, and where am I going to put it? You're going to see it. It's not a lot. You're not going to be able to get rid of that unless you possibly you could bring a topper in. Sometimes we'll try it. Bring a topper in, let's say to here. But see, it's not really very effective. Not very effective. So this is a problem if we want to light this way. So this is where we come into a whole different set of things to think about. Let's put this out of the way for a minute. Now, I mentioned before, when you have a window, it's a good thing to try to use it as the key to your source of light. That would also throw that shadow in a little differently. So let's see. What if we took this light, and I'm going to move this, just going to take this out of here for a second. We take this light. Now I'm going to move this light, so I'm going to turn it off. I don't like to keep a light on when I'm going to move it like this, because it gets, it's not good for the bulb. Filaments in the bulb will jiggle these filaments, and they give you trouble. They'll blow out faster. Well, let's take this light, and let's key this light from over here. Now, am I in the shot yet? No? Let's do this. Now, got a nice light here. Look at that. We got a V, and I wasn't even trying for that. But isn't that nice? That's great. Going to move in on that. We now don't have this shadow problem either. So this chair can go back wherever we want to put it. We don't have the shadow problem, which is something, again, you take into consideration. But now, doesn't it feel like this light is coming through this window? And yet the light isn't through the window. It's off to one side, as you can see. And now we come in here with a microphone boom. We'll probably come in from the opposite side. But where's our shadow? Let me see. Get over here. Where's our shadow here? It's not on the back wall, is it? It's on this wall over here that's out of camera. So that's what I mean. You take that microphone. Now, it's also a frontal key. Remember I said the frontal key comes around to where it's the V. That's all frontal key. But it's a variation that gives you that V. And, geez, you've got this problem here. But that's not a problem in the master. And when you move in, you might change this unit, or you can get in like I showed you in there. You can get in a lot closer. We also have things like this, and there's some more on the counter there that you can look at on the way after we finish over here on the counter. These are called fingers. We have fingers, and we have little dots that we can take, and when we get in close for the master, and I'll show them to you. We could take, and we can set, once we get in close, we can set this in front of the light, and we can set it so that we're really close to her. When you come in for a close-up, I can set this right in here like that. That won't be in the shot because it'll be in the close-up. Or I could take a bigger one. This is a double. I can take a double off of that. Look what happens. See? And here's a finger. Sometimes we might want to reach across with a finger. We might want to take the finger. Just take it a little bit off the top of the forehead like that. Or again, we can take it clear up to the mouth area. See? Everybody see that? These are really very useful things to have when you get in on your close-ups. You don't need a bunch of big flags. And again, take a little case, and if you buy a bunch of these, take a little case. And they also come in solids. You take a little case and put them in there and keep them. These are great. You use them all the time. They're terrific tools, lighting tools. Let's look at lighting this set with a card. You'll see a difference. This is hard still. Even though it's coming through that chimera-like device, it's still hard. We'd probably want to take and do what we did before in the other room. Maybe we'd put a white card here just out of the shot and let it recycle some of that light and fill that in a little bit. But let's take a look here at lighting this whole set now with one of these. Now this is a 4x4. You don't need to have this big. That's why I had the little one in the other room. The bigger this is, though, the softer and the more the light will wrap around. That's the advantage. So we'll see what happens here. We'll take this. And remember I said how much brighter this little guy is. This is this par again. Just take this and we're going to hit this thing. Now what's happened? We've lost the hardness of this, but we've created a nice soft texture here. See? But we've lost that hard feeling. Now by adjusting this a little bit, we can create a little bit more or less of that same situation, depending on what we want to do. Let's take this light for a second, get it out of our way. This, by the way, this is called a photoflex, this particular one. The nice thing about this is that it adjusts to several different lights, whereas the chimera unit, you have to buy them for each light. That's one of the reasons I think these are a very interesting thing for you to know about. Now let's take this and adjust this a little bit. let's bring this in closer and see what we want to do. Now what's happened? Oh, we've got a light in the shot. Aside from the light in the shot, tell me when it's out. Is that out? Okay, I'm going to back this off because we're really a little too hot now. Remember what I said? When this face starts to go white, we're overexposing here. So we'll back this out a little bit. We'll fill the card. The more I fill this card, the softer it becomes. I can still back it out some more. I can come around here. And I can now take the leg of the light out of the shot. And we're still a little hot, but it's a softer light that's coming through there. And depending on how you feel, this is how you change the value of light. That's why you say, I'm going to go with this type of thing, because this is what this does. Or I want to go through a sheet of diffusion like we did in the other room. Or you do something like this. This is the bounce. And again, we can come clear back in here. We can move this a little bit, coming in here. Let's just do this and we'll lift it up a little bit. We'll go down. And now, do that. We change that mood a little bit more. Just subtle little variations. Now let's talk about something here. One of the things we want to point out to you is the way you use lighting in a set. We have some instruments here. Here's a table lamp. This is very nice. You want to make sure that when you have something like this in a set that you utilize it to some advantage. Even if it's day. I mean, you have lights on in a day. It makes a little life. It's a little pool of light. You have a window in a set like this. We might want to utilize that, and we might want to put a little light in it. It happens I have a light back there, but I'll show you what that does to the wall. I'm going to go turn this on, and you'll see. Now, you see where the top comes over the shade here? I'm going to come down to take a flag. I'm going to bring this down right into here. Now, of course, if this room is a room up in an office building, and that is the kind of window situation you have, and you're 40 stories up or 3 stories up, you're not going to really be able to utilize that window that way. But if it's in a house or you're on the ground floor, or you can do it, this kind of creates interest on the back wall. Subtle, but it's interesting. It also has spread clear over to here. By adjusting that light, moving it one way or the other, I can just leave a little here and take it off of here, or I can let the whole thing go across. But notice it does not go on her. It's in back of her. See? The light is coming in here. By adjusting these also, we can change this pattern. Same way. Okay? In a set like this, we have to be concerned about the walls. So I've put a couple of lights up there to show you where lights are generally placed to light the walls. To light this wall here, you notice I have a light over here that's doing some of that. That's coming down and lighting this wall. We have a light up here hitting back into here. Now, if you're going to be on a location, this light might not be able to be up there in the roof. So you might have this light over here where the key is, but instead of hitting her, this light will go past it and hit the wall. You see, I'm in the same direction that light's in. So I could put that light over here, and I just have it hitting this wall back here, and I'll show you what we have on a dimmer here to give you a little bit of an effect of this. See what that'll do to that wall. You might not want, that's off, and we might just want a little bit of it on there. Just a little bit of it to pick up that wall, just that much. On the other hand, if we're going to use the blind effect, we might not want it on at all, because the blind effect is basically treating that wall. But we could add to it, and as I said, we could add a color to it. But that is the direction, and that light will not be spilling on her. Everybody understand that? Likewise, we might have a light, if we have to light something over here, we're going to want to come from back in here. Okay? Now, in this area, we basically can find a place that's out of the shot. We might have to come up to here to be out of the shot. But we want to throw that light that way. Again, the reason we're back crossing these walls is we don't want to run into microphone boom shadows. So that's why we light from the back out when we're lighting walls. On a set, on a typical set, what we would do is we would put, if we had a backlight for her, on the other side of the backlight, we'd have a light to light this wall. And over here, we'd have a light to light this wall on the top of the set. Now, you can't do that in a practical location that easy, so sometimes you have to figure out where you can place a light, frame the shot so you can get a light in, so you can treat the walls. Now, what happens that's nice today is that because the video and the film is so fast that by the time we light our general subject in our general area and we fill it with a little fill light, the walls are basically lit. But they're lit only because they have light on them. They're illuminated. They're not lit in terms of being lit like a play, like a stage play. One of the reasons we like to come from the back is because when you get something like this edge of this molding here, if we come from back here, this will have light on it. This will be darker, and this will be rich that way. Whereas if we come from the front, it doesn't have the same feel. This way you get the feeling of the molding. Same is true over here, the other side. So we want to come from the back out to light those walls. And also, again, that keeps our microphone boom shadows from a problem. Now, floors, these can always tend to be problematic with lighting and shadows and stuff like that. You have to make a decision as to what's more important. And again, sometimes by working furniture in the foreground or like a little coffee table here, you eliminate seeing the floor because the backlight puts all this all over the floor. So again, you have to work with things that you can work compositionally that also block out those shadows from being objectionable, just like we did with the chair before. Remember the first part? Now, the backing. This backing is just like a city backing. I have a light back there that we have on it. And there's two lights actually. In order to make that light like it feels like it's coming through the window, what I've done is here's the backing light. This is the backing light here. When we turn that off, I have another light here. See this light? This light I have coming back through the window to light up the mullions and to light up the chair. I deliberately made it more brighter than it needs to be. Put this light here, put a little light here, because when I turn on the backing light, I want that to feel like it's coming through there. It's just one light, it's over to the right. Again, it's coming back this way. So now I turn on my, my backing light, which is here, and I can make that subtle or I can make it real bright. I can make it seem like it's, late afternoon, the way the windows are lit. Actually, where that backing light is, I'll leave it bright here for a minute, this actually isn't a good location for this backing light. Physically, it's right in back of this wall up here, because the backing is not lit evenly. But I wanted you to see that, because normally if you're going to have a light up here, you'd probably have a light on the other side here, and maybe we'd have a light from underneath here shining up here, so we light that whole backing evenly. But if I had all that, it's easier for you to see where the problem is here. This just doesn't look right, just this. So what I can do to compensate for that is I can, instead of having it that bright, is I can lower the light level and fool you. Where is it? Back in here. Let me lower it down a little bit. So I'll lower it in there, and I still have my light coming through the window. I still have this guy, but I don't have him quite as bright. See? So now we're sort of getting a mixed feeling. We're sort of seeing, we're getting a feeling of depth. We got something out here that's interesting, and we're just doing a little bit of this just to create that feeling that that light is coming in. And then, as you saw before, we put the light over here to light her this way. Yeah, we still could have a bright full moon. It could be late in the afternoon. It could be early in the morning. It depends. And if we were to say that, we might want to put, instead of having this no color, we might want to put a little orange on that, or we could put blue on that.
I think you did that before. You showed us before.
Yeah, yeah.
Months ago.
Right. We have a blue light back here that just goes, that isn't doing a lot. But again, we take a look through this window, and on that rear wall, this guy. That's without anything, but now there's a wall back there, so we just take a little bit of light, just add some life to it. And we could put, because this is blue here, and this is a slight blue, it gives you the feeling that maybe there's a hallway out here. You know, we could also change this to orange and give another effect, or light, it depends on what you feel you want to do. The point is, you want to treat, you want to treat these areas. Yeah, we could make shadows out there, but we could also take and put a blinking red light, like it was getting, or any other color, like it was some fluorescent sign out there. Yeah, right. Another thing we could do is, what would be nice, if I had them handy, is get another tree and put it out there like it's just the top of the tree. You get a feeling. There's all sorts of things. You got to look around at the location you're in. Oh, there's a tree over there. We could take that tree over there and put it back there. This is what you do when you get into a practical location. You kind of look around, see what you've got to work with, and then you can sort of dress the set, make it look interesting. A tree out there with a little light on it would look much more interesting than what it's got there now. And it could then feel more like, okay, this is an apartment outside this area, and back here maybe there's a backyard or a tree to it or something like that. Or maybe there's a fire escape. Maybe there's a fire escape out here, and you got something, or you can put a clothesline out here. Anything to break it up, make it look interesting. The main thing I want to review with you that you should get today, basically how you can handle lighting a bigger area like a set, in the frontal area, side lighting, that sort of thing. Window that you see to make it maybe feel like the lighting is coming from there. Or if you had a lamp on the desk, you have a little light down here, which is another thing where your eye doesn't see it, but if this is for a big screen, for a movie, you're going to see that, you're going to notice that lamp a lot more than you notice it on a television screen. Basically with a set, you have the source of light, which is called the key light, which is something you have to determine relative to all the other problems involved in filming that, shooting that area. You have to always take sound into consideration, where they're going to work, how you're going to work this thing out. Once you've established where the source is going to be, then the fill obviously comes from the other side. And then you go and start dancing around, if you have time and if you can do it, to put a little backlight in, maybe a little edge lighting like we talked about in there, especially for the people and for the set. But if you don't have time and you really don't have equipment, you don't have the power, you can do what we did at first. You could go for a frontal key. Okay, remember, you have my email. If you forgot to get it, it's still on the poster in there. Get it, and if you forget and you lose it, call Birns and Sawyer. They can get you to me, or they'll take your number or something, but leave your email because it's easier for me to work that way with you. Okay, glad you enjoyed it.
1954. The post-World War II boom is in full swing, and in Hollywood, everything is bigger than ever. The studios are big, movie theater screens are wider and bigger, the productions are big, and so is the money. So where do two young men with big ideas but little money get started in such a big town? Life magazine photo correspondent Jack Birns and his cousin Cliff Sawyer, an ex-GI fresh from the Korean War, open a modest professional still photography camera shop in Hollywood. Like many self-realized successes, they started small. While the shop was small, the quality was high. Jack and Cliff had 4 challenging objectives: offer the finest photographic equipment available, back every sale with a solid satisfaction or money-back guarantee, merit customer confidence, demand and meet new challenges. May 1957. Birns and Sawyer set their sights on a new challenge, breaking New York City's monopoly of the lightweight motion picture rental business. Jack pulled together $10,000 worth of gear. Birns and Sawyer Cine Equipment Sales and Rental was born. Gone were the 35mm still cameras, replaced by 35 and 16mm Arriflex motion picture cameras. Now the pictures were moving, Hollywood was moving, and so was Birns and Sawyer. In the 1960s, the company moved into manufacturing its own Cine equipment and accessories. These Omnitar telephoto lenses were used to track rocket launches in the early U.S. space program. Meanwhile, the core rental business continued to grow, providing gear for a wide variety of productions, including Lawrence of Arabia and Easy Rider. Other projects found Birns and Sawyer Cine gear spanning the globe and working right here in Hollywood. In 1979, Marvin Stern, a longtime partner in the business, purchased the company. Marvin and his wife Audrey co-owned the business and continued the tradition of renting first-quality Cine cameras and selling virtually every production accessory required. 1998 brought another change in ownership, this time with a new direction and focus. Enter Bill Muir, a 20-year production and cinematography veteran and owner of Gunner Lighting and Camera. His plan? Merge and revitalize Birns and Sawyer by embracing emerging digital cinema technology. Today, the latest in digital and high-definition video Cine gear is available at Birns and Sawyer. Over the years, motion picture equipment evolves, is refined, new technologies emerge. But however cinematographers and storytellers choose to pursue, to create, and craft their visions, Birns and Sawyer will be there. The original founding objectives of Jack Birns and Cliff Sawyer remain and are timeless. Birns and Sawyer, a Hollywood legend, an industry icon.